Hi there. Welcome to The PrevenTable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Welcome to The PrevenTable. Very excited about today, and today truly could not be possible without Hubbard Radio and their support. We'll get into how in just a minute, but it involves a bathroom and pictures in the bathroom. But as always, we're super grateful for Hubbard's support. And again, today would not be possible without a weird coincidence and seeing somebody's picture hanging in the bathroom and saying, I know that guy. He should be on the podcast. So without further ado, sitting across from me is Clint Lowery, the lead guitarist of Sevendust. Welcome.
Oh, man, this is great. First off, thank you so much for allowing me to be here and just the good energy you guys got right off the rip. And yeah, the bathroom thing is like, it was like, if that's my pathway in here, that's great. But it's just interesting that the plaque we have and all the wall space we have in this huge new facility.
It's a beautiful facility, a lot of empty walls, and they put you in the bathroom.
Yeah, you know what? But it's appropriate. You know, we started from the bottom and now we're here. So
that's it.
That's it.
And so Clay Jenkins, who was a previous guest on the Next Step episode, he was using the facilities.
Yeah.
And he comes out of the bathroom and he goes, you're not going to believe this, but my son-in-law is hanging up in there, and brought us all in to look.
Yeah. That's totally
we're all standing in the bathroom.
He was so proud.
He was so proud. And he goes, I just had a great idea. I think you should be on your podcast.
Yeah.
And I said, let's make it happen, Clay. And he did, and you said yes.
Of course.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, and my hat's off to what you got. What you're doing here is just fantastic, and I can't even tell you how much I needed this personally in my life right now. So anytime I have an opportunity to talk about this or anything related to the subject, I'm all about it. I'll get emotional even right now, like off the beginning, because it's something I really needed at this point. And the holidays, everything gets a little crazy, So
yes,
this is a good way to reset.
Awesome. So I'm gonna kind of just, for those people who maybe do not know who you are, I'm just gonna kind of lay a couple of things out there. So you have been in music for a long time.
Yeah.
You're from Atlanta originally.
Yeah.
Right? And you've been a member of Sevendust, but you've been in some big names. You've played with Korn, you've played with Seether, you've played with probably a gajillion others, and you're kind of a big deal.
I don't know. I think I've kind of faked my way through a lot of things.
Okay.
But no, I mean, honestly, there's been opportunities and there have been a lot of things. I'm originally from North Carolina. I'm a country boy.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I migrated to Atlanta where there was obviously a better music scene.
Sure.
And then found a band there that kind of got me into Sevendust, and it just kind of went on from there. But I've completely, my entire life, I had a lot of opportunities that deep down I didn't feel worthy of, but I kept going and kept pushing through it. And I'm always the underdog mentality, So any of the things I have, I'm thankful for it.
At Prevent+Ed, we always say that we root for the underdog, and you have to be if you're in this business, right? Because substance use disorder is really sad, and it's insidious, and when you feel like you're winning, sometimes it sneaks up and bites you in the butt, right?
Yeah.
And you have to inevitably, intrinsically, you have to root for that person that can succeed if they just just have a little bit fill in the blank, right? Whether that's self-confidence, support, confidence, whether that's a job, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so we're a little scrappy too, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it boils down. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit, but just that defect that I've always had, the lesser than, I'm not worthy of this. These things that were kind of imprinted on me at an early age, and it still carries with me, and it's still active in my mindset. Mm-hmm. I just have different tools to kind of process it and get through it, and and do allow myself joy and do allow myself a little success, or, and then obviously the failures. I'm very comfortable when I feel failure, because that was just something I like to brew in when I was a young man. And still to this day, I just like uncomfortable things. I'm like, this is home, so I have to kind of allow myself to be happy and allow myself to have the positives in my life as well.
Well, so I think that's why you were lighting up when earlier we were talking about the things we do for younger kids.
I love
right?
that.
Where we talk about setting goals and managing uncomfortable feelings, because they're not good or bad, right? They're just uncomfortable and they come. So how can you sit with them and how can you use them, to propel forward? And your face really lit up when I talked about that we teach first graders how to accept a compliment.
Oh, I love that.
More than just like cool shoes, right?
Yeah.
Like really like you're a good speller, or you were very kind to me when I tripped and fell on the playground, or, you're very funny, or you've got great dimples.
Yeah.
So were you always into guitar? Like, was that a talent that you had, or did that become kind of a way for you to kind of escape, or how did you turn to music?
Well, my mother and father were musicians, so my dad was a musician. He was my hero. My mom was a musician, and she kind of took a back seat, put her career on hold to take care of the kids. So she had my older brother and myself and my younger brother. And so my father and mother were divorced when I was 8 years old, but they were both musicians. So it was around the house. That was our culture. Of course, they didn't want me to pursue it. And then when they realized that I was going to pursue it, they supported it and stuff. But it was always, the music thing was there. And you mentioned escape. What I really fell in love with music, the emotional connection I had with it was the escape. I didn't really fit in a lot of the circles in school, and it was very, school can be a cruel playground, and
school is brutal.
It's brutal. And now looking back, my specific school situation was rough, rougher than most. So that was, and I was a musician and kind of an awkward kid, so I didn't fit into those cliques. So music was the escape. All the emotions, I had a volatile childhood in a lot of regard. So the music was an absolute, just let me disconnect from that and let me just lose myself in these sonics and this aggression and these different, whatever the music was pulling up in me emotionally, it was I would completely forget about things for a while. And it was a love affair right from the beginning. Not to mention the parents, them doing it. My dad was my idol. I loved him. He was a fantastic musician. So yeah, it was a connection right off the bat. And
did you find camaraderie in music?
I did.
Like I'm thinking about myself in high school. I was a nerd. I'm sure that's shocking to you, but I was a nerd. But the one thing that I would go to would be live shows.
Yeah.
And ska was really big when I was in high school. So go to shows, and you could get lost in it, but also look around and realize that there were people that were like as weird as you.
Oh, absolutely.
Who like would geek out on the same things you would.
It's huge, yeah.
You
found your people, your circle, and
exactly.
your like-minded, community. And I loved it. There's always a rebellious with rock music.
Oh, sure.
You always find the other ones like, you feel the same way I do.
Like wrong. Yeah, right, exactly.
And I was into a lot of metal, and like I was into everything. But yeah, it was, and I latched on to a bunch of older musicians because I excelled at music because it was always around. I found a few older musicians, and they took me on, and they allowed me to play with them, and I just felt I belonged to a group of people that understood me, and that was a beautiful feeling with the insecurities I had at that stage of my life.
So I feel very awkward in my own skin. I think most people do. I think that's like the secret to being a grown-up is that grown-ups still feel very awkward and very uncomfortable. And you can be a cool rock star and still feel like you're 15 years old with pimples on your face and girls don't like you. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So have you like ever grown out of that? You're standing on a stage with thousands of people, right? Like singing every word to your songs. Do you ever feel not awkward asking for a friend?
Well, it's funny. One of my friends has this clothing line. It's called Awkward Human, and I love it because I do feel that way. And what I've learned is I embrace that feeling. Like there's something about. I used to think it was, I'm not saying socially I'm awkward. I've always been socially awkward. I can fake it pretty well because you learn these patterns of ways to get through it. Oh, if I just do this, and you would never think it probably. For both of us, because you interact with enough people, you figure out a way to do it. But deep in an emotional level, I am uncomfortable when I leave those social interactions like that. I'm exhausted mentally.
Yes.
And I know there's a good amount of people that are, but I've gotten better at it. And with age, I don't really care much about what people think, which takes a lot of pressure off because, that awkward feeling, if you're worried about what everyone thinks, that it really magnifies that awkward and that uncomfortable social interaction. So now I'm just, it's not that I don't care what people think. I'm just not so concerned. I don't need validation from others. I don't, I know the people that matter to me, and as long as I have a good relationship with them. And so there's not like this I don't care factor. It's just more like, it just doesn't, it's not part of the equation as far as what I feel about myself.
Yeah, I feel like the older I get, the less I have to give.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was going to say that.
Right. I was going to say, we had an F-bomb on the last episode, so I'm a little worried about what's going to happen with this one. But it is weird. It's like the older you get, the less you care, or you care about very different things. You care about being a good role model. You care about being a mentor. You care about... That's
a better way to put it.
Right?
Sure.
Like you just change what you care about. So I'm fast forwarding here, but you're, in your 20s and you're in a band, and is it sex, drugs, and rock and roll like you would imagine?
Yeah, it
what all of our parents warn us about.
Yeah, well, so I graduated. Everything they warned, I was like wanting to do all those things, but I graduated from high school early so I could go on the road. So I was on tour. I was 17 years old.
Whoa! Like
playing in cover bands. Then we had eventually turned into an all original band, and so I've been doing this my whole life. And there, going into it, my mom was alcoholic. So I rebelled by not drinking for the first, I drank, my first drink was 16 years old, blackout drunk. I knew something different was, I didn't drink like everyone else. I knew that. So I stayed away from it for the most part.
Were you straight edge or you just
didn't?
No,
I didn't want to be like my mom. So, but I knew when I did drink, I'm like, I love this.
Something is lighting up in the brain. Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, this is scary. So through my early 20s, it wasn't that my drinking was kind of like, not really. I would go these bouts, but every time I did, it was always bad. So there was always that. But yeah, when I didn't, until I got in Sevendust, when the culture in that band was to drink a lot and to do all the things, I fell right into that. And I was like going from one band I had been in for a long time into Sevendust. I was nervous. I was in a new place. I was in Atlanta. I coped by just joining the party.
Because those feelings of, am I good enough, inadequacy, all of it, it just comes rushing back, right?
Yeah. And then the alcohol and drugs with them, and it was a lot of fun. You're in this band. And then we get signed shortly after that, and then it's off. And then you're off in these different places, and it's the perfect breeding ground for alcohol abuse.
Right.
If you have an issue in that world, it's going to be rough because all of you're exposed to all of it. And so if you don't have a foundation or anything, but it was a lot of fun those first few years, not a lot of consequences every now and then, which is in that environment, it's tougher because those are badges of honor, being disruptive, being crazy, being, being abusive, not abusive, but some people are verbally abusive. So there's a lot of things that go on there that, you're just rocking. It's rock and roll.
It's like the machismo, the whole, the thing.
Yeah. And self-centeredness and all this, give me praise. It's a very toxic environment for the most part if you have issues in that world like I did. So it was all in that culture for many years. A lot of great moments completely faded. and no memory of these events in my life that I look back and like, that was so, people are like, what was this show like? I'm like, I could not tell you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that alcoholism and drug addiction stole from me were I didn't steal from me. I allowed that to take these moments and these memories, but I don't dwell on that anymore, but it is one of those things that happen. I look back, I'm like, man, so many great opportunities just completely thrown away. But that's that's the pain and the gift of desperation that I needed,
And I think I can say that you are a person who no longer uses substances, correct?
Yeah, I haven't drank or did a drug 16 years, October 24th, 16 years. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I am so thankful for those years. I'm thankful for every day, and it's all the cliches I used to hate. When I got, I used to hate all those things. Like,
people are probably listening going, yep, I know those cliches.
Yeah, and they all were true. And, and there's a reason they're there. And, I've heard of many different cliches from different support groups, and they're all just kind of like leading you to the same place. And, and I love that. All those things, I embrace those things today. But man, when they're early, every cell in my body is like, this is the one.
Yeah, you're like cringing. When
I hate it.
Yeah.
They're right. But
and in these past 16 years, you've become a dad.
Yeah.
And a husband, right?
Yeah.
And you're here in St. Louis. I mean, what a rock star place to be.
I never thought I would end up in the Midwest.
No kidding.
At all.
Yeah.
I got kind of not lied to. My wife, she brought me here.
Did you get duped?
Yeah, I got duped.
Yeah.
That's a way less aggressive of a word. But I got duped. And it was like, I came here in the spring and fall, it's great
it's
here.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was down in Kirkwood.
Love it.
It's beautiful.
Oh, fall in Kirkwood. Lovely. Right.
Nice, charming houses. And then it was like, I moved here in like a January. It was like the coldest day in Missouri history. I'm like sliding in on my my U-Haul. But yeah.
That's amazing. So a couple of questions related to, do you identify as sober, or what word would you like me to use?
Yeah, I'm sober. I started my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
I know probably shouldn't break my anonymity there, but that's my personal journey, and there's been a lot of things that I've leaned on with fitness and
music.
Music. Oh man, and to do music sober has been huge.
I was just gonna ask that. Okay,
Yeah.
So how is that? And do you feel like your craft is better? Because I know we hear sometimes that musicians and artists say, I do my best work when I'm high or when I'm stoned or whatever.
Yeah.
And we have a whole presentation that's like, that ain't true. Like, it might feel true at the time.
Well,
but
I mean, I'm always people like Jimi Hendrix. Would Jimi Hendrix have done the record, or Alice in Chains? Well, we'll never know, but you'll never know what Jimi Hendrix, complete sober Jimi Hendrix would have done.
Right.
All I know is for me, there were dark times that I was going through that I would say I was writing, and it was enhancing those things were inspiration to the music. But there were also so many times where I was just so faded and so lost that I didn't write. I didn't do anything productive. So now the only difference is I'm at the writing table a lot more, and I'm focused, and I have more a methodical way of thinking about the process. I love the process. I don't care about really what is coming out. I just love sitting down, turning my computer on, my guitar, playing, writing, composing. Like, I love that. And that's the thing that I've come to find, that because of I love the process, the product usually, because there's so much more product, there's so much more time going into it. Whatever I lost in my dark inspiration from the alcohol and drugs, whatever I lost there, I gained in just being productive,
right,
and being focused, and my chops are better. I sing better. And so, it kind of, I could understand that there's doors that open when you're high and all these things, but there's also a tremendous amount of doors that open when you're not, when you're totally clear-minded and you have all this positive energy. And so, yeah, I don't know. I would love to hear what Jimi Hendrix record would sound like if he was totally sober.
Right.
Who knows? Stevie Ray Vaughan was a good example. He was, completely out of his mind for a while, played great, and then he was sober, and he had this enormous kind of spike in his his playing. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of data there, like before and after. But then there's a thing too where usually people get sober when they're older, and so I believe there's a creative spark in young musicians that happens from 18 to 26, 25, and I think that's where everyone's usually experimenting with drugs, and so there's that window that naturally a young heart is there. That spirit is usually happening at the same time that
because neurologically their brain is firing.
Absolutely.
They're trying to figure out who they want to be. They're experiencing things. They're at a point in achieving freedom, maybe not living with their parents, or like
music differently.
Exactly. And text becomes like sometimes you're actually at that point reading for fun or for like discovery, not just because you have to finish your term paper, so it's really fascinating.
There's energy levels that happen. I've lost steps in some of that. I get a little more jaded. I have kids now. I want to play with them, and my energy is pushed to different things now in my life. So yeah, it's a debate, but I really believe it's just one of those things that I don't think it was necessary for Kurt Cobain to have to go through that to write some of those songs.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about being a dad. So I'm wondering how that has influenced you creatively, and also to what extent do you talk to your kiddos about your life experience?
I mean, being a dad is absolutely, another cliche. It's the best thing. When I had my first child, I have a son and a daughter, 12 and 10. So I started late. I was 39 years old. I was really ready on every level to have a child. So I've embraced it 100%. It's really, touring is difficult for me because I am
such. You got to be away from them.
Yeah. And my father was gone a lot, so there was a disconnect with him and I. So I'm really weary. I've tapered back on the touring so I could be more of a present father, which is a huge priority to me. And, it's the best thing ever. I love it. I talked to my son. My son has been, I'm trying to do this without crying, but we'll drive around and he'll say, I want to be sober, Dad. Oh. And I'm like, I said, why? He's like, because he said, I see the other parents, and I see some of the stuff, and because I've told him some of the stories, and not to glamorize it, but I'm like, Dad, he's, why don't you drink, Dad? I'm like, well, here's why. And I'm open about it. And he's just for him to say that, and I had to ask questions like, why do you, what's your what are you thinking when you say that? Like, what do you, and I'm like, and then you had mentioned before about there are a lot of people that can drink that have no problem, that have maybe a drink or two, and then their body accepts it, their mind accepts it differently. So for a lot of people, my wife drinks, and I don't want my son to believe that everyone that does is this demonic, that this is something that people do and it's enjoyable and a control level. It's great. I said, your father's different, and I can't do that. And he was just, he's such a driven young boy. And my daughter hasn't gotten quite to those conversations, but she's very, very, her awareness is incredible. So she's
obviously she's a girl.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
She's like, she's definitely the superior being in that.
Just kidding.
But she's, I believe that. My mom raised me. But she's like me. So she's the one that I look at when she'll just be staring off and her mind's going a million miles per hour. I'm like, oh, that's good and it's bad. So she's got the artist, tortured artist syndrome. But she's, I talk to him openly about it because he asks a lot more questions, and I love talking to him about it and telling him my experience, and he'll ask me like, what's the crazy, it's just it's a very open dialogue, and I believe he's at the age where he can start accepting that. And I think it's like you had mentioned too, which I think is great, is that there is an importance for me to explain to him that alcohol and these, certain things are not, this bad thing. It was more of a thing that was for me. And, he was like, I just want to be sober. I want to feel good. I want to do all these things that you talk about. And I said, absolutely, I'll support you in anything you do, if he takes a drink one day, I'm not going to be.
You're not going to disown him.
No,
you're going to have a
I'm
conversation about it. Yeah,
and of course I'm going to always be like, are you going to act or respond to it the way it is in him and my daughter, to have some of those
because
mechanisms.
It was in your mom.
Absolutely, and my grandfather. It's the typical garden
but
variety.
Then they also can see their mom, who has a different relationship with alcohol, and,
totally,
and can use it in times of celebration or whatever.
Yeah.
What I love that you're saying, and I was hoping you would say this. This is a little bit difficult to find on the internet, right? So I wasn't exactly sure if you were going to say that you talk to your kids about it. But what I love is that you do share with them your experience, not the nitty gritty, because of course they don't need all of that, but to say like, this is why I don't do this. Here is what can happen. Here is why I'm urging you to be safe. Because that's something else we hear, is that when kids have a parent who has a substance use disorder, they think that it's like a death sentence, right? That it's automatically going to happen to them. And that's not true, right? That's not true.
Yeah.
But to talk about it and to show that our adults can be fallible. I mean, I don't know about you, but that was not really a conversation I had when growing up, is like that my parents had challenges and here's how they navigate them and here's how they cope and, therapy and things. That was not something that was discussed, which I think our generation is really trying to do things a little bit differently, right? So that your son can say, like, I want to be sober just like you. And whether that turns out to be the case or not, like the fact that he can have those conversations and that you're open to those is pretty incredible, and is something that we try to teach, we try to encourage parents to do.
Well, that's I'm trying my best.
Aren't we all?
I've questioned like, what's too much?
Yep.
What should I say now? Am I going to imprint one of these little seeds that are going to grow into something bad later? Because, excuse me, you're worried about that as a parent. You want to do the right thing. You want to say the right thing. And I know I've had plenty of things that were abusive and too much and volatile that happened to me that they're not even in it. It's their childhood looks nothing like mine.
Totally different.
So that already is setting them up for a better situation. My mom and dad loved me. It was just like you said, there was a different culture. You did not speak of these things. And especially when your parent is actually having an issue with it themselves, there's a tremendous amount of denial. And denial was a very attractive thing for me because I saw my mom, pretty much activate that her whole life, and I would tell her, please stop, Mom, stop, and there was all these different things. And so, their childhood looks different, and I'm thankful for that every single day, and I do my best. And I think that's what any of us, we're all just trying to figure it out. There's many days I fall short and have my triggers and my things, and my childhood shows up in me. Today I feel very spiritual. Today I feel great. I'll go home. It'll be a fantastic day. Tomorrow might look a lot different.
One of my ex-boyfriends, one of them who's a big fan of yours, by the way, he is a dad, and he's a very good dad. And at the end of the day, he would sometimes reflect, right, on whether or not he had done enough as a parent. And he would say, did I do enough for her? And was I there enough? And I think I was on my phone too much. And, maybe I was short with her. And he would say, like, I don't think I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
And my answer to him was always, and would still be to this day, the fact that you're reflecting on it and you're wondering how you can be better is the sign of being a good parent,
100%.
Whatever the hell that means, right? But it's like you want to do better, and you're thinking about how can I be better tomorrow than I am today. Like, that's the sign of a stand-up parent.
Yeah. If my father or my mother would have sat me down, I'm really trying, and a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of accountability, that would have gone a long way. I apologize to my kids on a regular. I'm like,
Dad,
I shouldn't have done that. I want them to see me apologize. I want them to see me. I'm not going to be this prideful. Part of me doesn't want to do the apology. Part of me is like,
course.
I don't want to
like,
do
I'm
that.
the dad.
And I've had moments where I'll do something wrong, and I'm like, I know it's wrong, but I'm standing by it, it's ridiculous, the ego and all the stuff that kicks in. But they know I apologize, and I want them to see that, and I see them apologize when they do something
You're
wrong.
modeling it.
Yeah, and that's the only thing. And I see the things I do wrong show up in them too, and that's the scariest thing.
Oh, isn't that so scary?
I just
right?
taught my child
You're
how
like,
to be
"Whoa."
self-centered. I just taught my child how.
I think
to,
there's a lot of country songs about that, right?
Yeah.
Like I just taught them how to do
Oh,
this,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
wish I didn't.
I'm gonna go home and write a song
right?
about it.
Exactly. Yeah, make a new metal song out of that.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
the hell is new metal, by the way?
Oh yeah. So
What is it? I don't
it's
even.
something that happened like when we were coming up. Korn, a few of these bands came in, and they were branded new metal because it was like this heavy music that was not exactly like the older metal riffing.
Okay.
So they put attached this name to it. It was attached to every band that
We
came out.
got to have a name for everything,
in
right?
that era, yeah. So when that was out, we didn't really pay that much attention to it. We're lobbed into that, and that's fine. That is what it is. There's like a resurgence now, so everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we're new metal."
Right. You're
We're
like,
new
yeah,
metal.
sure, yeah,
Like, you said you weren't. No, but it's ridiculous. People love the categories, but that's how people process it, and that's what they want to do. So they have their little groups of the genre they love. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know? It doesn't bother me, but it is ridiculous.
So we were talking about Sorry for that digression, but
No,
last
no,
night
I'm
I
glad
was
you
like,
brought that
"What
up.
is new metal? I've not
Yeah.
even heard of this." But I mean, I can see like all the groups like non-point
There's
or
all
whatever.
kinds.
Like I can see
Deathcore,
the
metalcore.
exact. But I'm
there's
like
all kinds.
new metal. I've never heard that. Anyway, speaking of role modeling, so one question that I just really have wanted to ask is, I think that when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, there were not a lot of celebrities, musicians, talking about being sober.
Yeah.
Right. And I've had conversations about what has changed. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not to the level that I would like it to be or that I think it could be, because I think that if everybody who was actually not getting wasted all the time talked about how they're not getting wasted all the time, like the world would be a totally different place.
Yeah.
But most of us don't talk about it. I'm not like, guess what I did last night? I had one glass of wine and then I stopped drinking. No. People will say like, oh yeah, I had a lot to drink last night, and then I,
totally
passed out on the couch and whatever. I mean, you don't talk about moderate drinking and you don't talk about not drinking or not using. So growing up, there weren't a ton of musicians that were open about their sobriety. There was straight edge, and there still is, but there was that. But there wasn't, and there really weren't, unless you were watching a Behind the Music, there really weren't a lot of people talking about the fact that they maybe had a substance use disorder and were in recovery. I think that it is changing, and it's not just talking about addiction, but also there are more celebrities and musicians in particular talking about mental health.
Of course.
So I'm wondering why you think that is and what you feel like your role is in that.
Oh, that's heavy. So
it is heavy, and I'm sorry for the hard pivot from new metal to this, but but this is the crux of why it's like such a big deal that you're on here, right? Because you're open about it, you're talking not just about your recovery, but about trauma and about family dynamics and about what you hope to do with your kids. I mean, pardon my French, that's pretty fucking rock and roll, but that's not what you normally think of as rock and roll, That's funny you say that, because I always said the new rock and roll and rebellious is to not do those things, like the anti, I think social media, there's been these really incredible ways to communicate with each other, and obviously a platform. So that's great, and it's bad at the same time. The positive, I think, with the social media platform is people do have more opportunities to kind of express different sides of life and ways to live life. So a lot of people, there are trends that happen, things that are cool to talk about, things that everyone's really excited to talk about. Every now and then you have this wave of positivity, and depending on the algorithm that you're being exposed to,
like a lot of the stuff that I do, it's a lot of fitness stuff. It's a lot of the positive things, the inspirational quotes, all the stuff that gets fed to me, because that's what I seek out, So I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of bands, especially now, are starting to talk about the mental health, and there is a trendy aspect to that. But it's something that I'm just happy for. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a positive trend. Now there's a little bit more exposure to the educational side of what happens, or this other version of life. So you got this musician that you look up to, and they're living this great life, and they're doing this great music, and you also find out that they're not really partaking in the alcohol, or they got sober, and now they're trying to do this different thing. You see that, and obviously it's like, oh, they can do that. I want to do that. And so there's that platform social media has to expose that. And I think that that's helping a lot of these musicians. The mental health thing is powerful, because there's so many, after so many times, eventually they're like, we have to talk about this.
Especially when they're losing people in their band, or
it's a lot
close to their close friends. I mean, it is an industry. The entertainment industry has been hit very hard by substance use and suicide.
Yeah. The suicide is a whole other subject in all walks of life. No, obviously not just the musicians, but and it's, it happens to musicians a lot of time. A lot of people, when someone passes that is a celebrity status, there's this whole wave, and there's so many people that are on the street, that are different, just normal, everyday people. That's happening on a consistent basis, on brutal levels all the time. When a celebrity, when that happens to them, it's more like, okay, let's pay attention to this. And, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Again, any kind of education that comes out of some kind of trauma is a good thing. Like maybe some of the pain and some of the, the loss can spark some kind of just an outreach, so more people the people that are on the edge and get ready to go there themselves, maybe take a step back. And I'm all for just like getting it out there, that there are solutions, and there's ways to communicate with each other, whether people do or not. It's up to the individual at the end of the day. But the more that's out there, I make it very known that I'm sober. I don't.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't try to name any particular organization, but I do. I do a gratitude list every day. I share it in my little Insta story, and it's just 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. And I've been doing that for years, ever since I've stopped drinking. It was one of the things I've do. And it's, now people look at it and they read it, and they'll write to me directly, and they'll talk about it. And every now and then there'll be a person struggling with this, and they said, I noticed you mentioned sobriety and this and that, and how's that going? And so I'll have open conversations about it. It takes a few minutes just to communicate with somebody. Just say, I've been through it. Here's what I did. And maybe you can do that. Maybe you can find your own way. But I love those conversations. It doesn't take any energy out of my life. All it does is feed.
I was going to say, it probably feeds you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hear someone in the desperation they have, and I'm like, man, I've been there. I know what that feels like, and I don't have to do that today. And, so I love the service part of it the most.
And fitness is another thing. You've mentioned that a couple of times. So music and fitness, that has really kind of kept you grounded.
The fitness is, I credit that as much as any other spiritual program. I keep my body right and my mind, what comes with that. And there's so much data now that goes along, which is another thing. Social media floods my thing with this, the science behind what actually being physical and active does to your mental health. And it has been a huge thing in my demeanor, the way I am with people. The vanity part or whatever, I'm not chasing that. When I was younger and kind of self-absorbed, I that was something. I want to look great. Mm-hmm. But now I go and do it. I'm getting old. I'm 52 years old in December, and I just like moving. It makes me feel better.
And you get that dopamine surge, natural dopamine surge. Like that we've had a lot of people that talk to us about, what they like, what's their thing after drugs, right? So whether it's fitness or whether it's, what is the thing? And fitness seems to be, how do I say this? Like a group into itself. Like if you find fitness during recovery, like you are like in it.
Yeah.
And not in like a weird way, you know, not to the exclusion of anything else, but it is the thing that keeps your body and your mind moving.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
fell right into it. I mean, immediately. And I was always like going on runs and sweating out alcohol and drugs. You know? I was like in between worlds, you know. But I fell right into it. And then there were people like, oh, you're too much into it. I did the whole CrossFit thing for a while where I was like obsessed about that.
Yeah.
And I've done all these different things throughout my sobriety. But what the ultimate thing is, I know that I'm obsessed with it. It makes me feel good, but that is one kind of obsession and addiction that I'm happy to have today.
Right, exactly.
There have been times where it overrode some of the other priorities, so I had to check that too.
Got
I was
it.
working out 2 or 3 times a day. My kids out there, it's dial it back, you know, because I was feeding on it too much because my mind works that way. I'm
Yes.
very alcoholic, very drug addicted mentality. So I find things
You're
I
in.
like.
You're all in.
Yeah. Dark chocolate, I'm all in.
You're all in.
All of it, but I do the ice plunges and I do all those things like to that degree. But then I the older I've gotten, as I need to dial those things back. I don't need to be too much into anything. I need to balance my life, and there's days that are not balanced, but you know that's what I'm working toward anyway.
Can I do a couple of rapid fire questions before we?
Oh man,
finish?
I have like very limited bandwidth, so it might not be super rapid.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So
let's
I
go.
know on the way here you were listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is like what kind of music are you into right now?
R&B.
R&B.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Like are
love-
we talking like Leon Bridges or more
Like
old school?
Old school.
Ooh.
Like her is one of my favorite artists. She's just I
She's
just
fabulous.
she is unreal. She's very talented, and I fell in love with her a long time ago. So I went through the pandemic and fell like all the way in. I love R&B. I've always loved the production of it, so that's what I'm digging on these days.
Okay. All right. I sorry for the digression, but I have also been into R&B, but more like old school blues
love it,
lately,
yeah.
and really gotten into Kingfish. Are you familiar with him?
That sounds real familiar.
So he's like this young guy out of Clarksdale, Mississippi, who is like following in the footsteps of Buddy Guy and everything.
I think I know who you're
Incredible.
talking about.
And they just profiled him on 60 Minutes like 2 weeks ago.
Is he got like he's just an old soul voice?
And he's like a bigger guy.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he gets
yeah.
down in the crowd. And
I know what you're talking
he's
about.
Killer. He's
Okay,
killer.
I'm gonna go listen to him.
He's really killer. And now you've inspired me to listen to some her because she's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your favorite song of yours to play?
Mm.
And that's like what do you just love to play?
Probably
And why?
Probably Angel Son, because you know what, I'll take that back. There's a song Xmas Day that we do and that I sing a little bit on. It was based around my mom, this really dysfunctional Christmas we had. Playing that song always gets me heightened emotionally. Yeah, that song for some reason it's always been, but it's Xmas Day. Yeah,
Okay. All right, I don't know that one, so I'm gonna check that out.
yeah, check it out.
Acoustic. Y'all pretty good at acoustic.
Yeah, we love it.
So, acoustic. What's your favorite acoustic song to play, or is that Xmas Day also?
Yeah, that's actually Xmas Day there's a little bit of
Is there?
acoustic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It translates well to that.
Okay.
Yeah, very
Okay.
melodic.
Did you feel really weird covering Johnny Cash?
It's funny because it's like
Like,
it was the day, and that was a fluke because it was the day Johnny Cash died. Everyone's like, "Oh, that's a great Johnny Cash." It was our interpretation of Johnny Cash's cover of Nine Inch Nails.
right, exactly. Yeah.
It was like Johnny. It was
It was like
Trent
kind of like
Reznor's
a.
my guy.
Yeah.
I loved Nine Inch Nails so much, but then he died that day. We had an acoustic show in Athens, Georgia that night, and my singer didn't know the song, and I'm like, I want to do this song just to pay tribute. Do you want to learn it? He's like, oh, you just sing it. So it was a fluke that I even sang it. So, but that became
fluke.
like a really cool thing, and a tribute to Johnny Cash, which is, a lot of people love that guy, and I do too.
What are you singing in the car when you pick up your kids from school?
Oh man.
Like, is it like T Swift all the time, or are you one of those households that it's not Taylor Swift? What is it?
No, they're not Swifties. My daughter's not. She listens. Well, she she loves it. She's more into like what has she been listening to lately? She listens to gosh, it was just on the tip of my tongue. My son listens to like mumble rap and all that stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, but my daughter, we were singing Britney Spears in the car last night. She was in a piano lesson. I picked her up and she was singing. And what was funny is she was doing Britney Spears, Oops, I Did It Again, but then we turned it into Hit Me Baby One More Time. So she's finding all these old, she loves all these old pop stars and stuff that my wife loved. She introduces like, you'll love this song. So she plays all these older pop stars, but she loves Taylor Swift. Obviously it's just great.
Yeah.
Absorbed great by the youth.
Right. Right. And so that was actually going to be my last question. If your kiddos play instruments. So your daughter plays piano.
Yeah, she plays piano. She's into it. I got a new keyboard. Her mind's blown, like, cause it's really crazy cinematic sounds. And she'll sit there and just kind of hit them. And she's like, every note, I can't hit a wrong note. And because it just sounds so good. So she's into that. I don't know if she'll chase that or not, but yeah, my son's a sports fanatic. Yeah.
Okay. Well, fitness, kind of like you.
Yeah, he's doing that. I never played organized sports, so I'm like enjoying watching him.
You're like, wow.
Yeah, I do.
That is impressive.
I play with him and stuff, but I never. He knows I don't really understand every rule and regulation. But he'll correct me all the time on that. But yeah.
Well, thank you so very much. I mean, this has truly been an honor and a highlight for us here at the podcast.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
If you liked what you heard, please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to The PrevenTable. Follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, just Clint Lowery Official, Sevendust Official on Instagram and social media. Sevendust, on Facebook, and me on Facebook. Clint Lowery Facebook, and
buy some music.
Yeah.
Support your artists. Buy some music.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Buy some cotton and tunes.
There you go. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Had a great time.
Thanks for joining us at The PrevenTable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at PreventEd.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The PrevenTable.